So the British royal media machine has once again found itself pushing a narrative that many critics believe says far more about palace public relation than it does about reality. So this time the focus is on Kate and the fresh wave of headlines suggesting she may be on the verge of forming close friendship with the newest women connected to the royal family. So what was likely intended to be a flattering story about connection, support and royal harmony has instead sparked a very different reaction. Actually, for many observers, it has only highlighted what they see as recurring pattern, the constant need to manufacture friendship around Kate whenever questions emerge about her public image, personal relationship or role within the institution. So, the latest report revolves around a suggestion that Kate could become close to Peter Phillips' new wife. On the surface, it sounds harmless enough. Families grow, relationships develop, and new connections naturally form. But critics argue that the way these stories are being presented feel strangely familiar. Rather than appearing as organic development, the narrative has all the hallmarks of a carefully packed public relation exercise designed to make Kate appear surrounded by loyal allies and meaningful friendship. The problem is that this strategy may be producing the opposite effect. Instead of convincing the public that Kate is thriving within supportive social circle, each new best friend storyline raises an uncomfortable question. Why does there always seems to be need for another friendship headline? Why are royal commentator and media outlets so eager to attach Kate to every new woman who enter the royal orbit? The repetition itself has become difficult to ignore. Over the years, royal coverage has repeatedly introduced various women as potential confidants, close companions or trusted friend of the Princess of Wales. Yet many of these narratives quickly fade away. One moment the public is told about strong bond, the next the story disappears entirely, replaced by another supposed friendship waiting to take its place. That circle has led some critics to conclude that these stories are less about gaining relationship and more about maintaining a carefully, fully constructed image. So the latest example only reinforces that perception. Rather than making Kate appear social influential or deeply connected, the reports have permitted the discussion about whether the palace is working overtime to fill a gap that shouldn't exist in the first place. If someone is genuinely surrounded by strong friendship and meaningful personal connection, there is usually no need to constantly advertise them through headlines. This is where the narrative begins to unveil. What was intended to project warmth and popularity instead risks creating the impression of isolation. Every new article describing possible future friendship can adversely suggest that existing friendships are either invisible or insufficiently convincing. The result is a public relations strategy that seems trapped in a circle of overcompensation. For critics of the royal institution, this is not simply a story about Kate. It is a story about how palace narratives are crafted and how they often underestimate the public ability to recognize familiar patterns. So modern audiences are increasingly skeptical of stories that appear overly managed or excessively polished. They are quick to question narrative that seems designed to create a specific emotional response. In this case, the response has not been admiration. Instead, many observers have reacted with disbelief, asking why the media continue to push the idea that every new female figure connected to the royal family must somehow become Kate's newest ally. The approach can feel repetitive, predictable, and disconnected from reality. Some commentators argue that it is actually diminishing Kate rather than elevating her. By constantly portraying her as someone who needs a new companion, a new supporter, or a new friend, the media may intentionally paint a picture of dependence rather than strength. A truly confident public figure does not require endless story about friendship to validate their position. This is why the latest reports have generated criticism rather than enthusiasm. So, the more aggressively these narratives are promoted, the more attention they draw to what they are trying to conceal. Instead of showcasing a vibrant and natural connected royal environment, they can create the impression of carefully managed image operation working behind the scene. So, that perception becomes even more significant when viewed against the broader backdrop of royal coverage over the past several years. So, the royal family has faced ongoing scrutiny, internal tension, and question about relevance in changing world. So, public trust in traditional royal storytelling has weakened, and audience have become increasingly aware of how narratives are shaped. So, within that context, every attempt to present a flawless image faces greater resistance. For Kate, this creates a difficult situation. The media often portray her as ideal royal figure, graceful, dependable, and universal admired. Yet, the constant, effort required to maintain that image sometimes undermines the message itself. Actually, when every aspect of public figures appears carefully curated, authenticity becomes harder to demonstrate. The friendship narrative is a perfect example. Rather than allowing relationships to develop naturally and speaking for themselves, the media frequently rushes to define them, label them, and celebrate them before they even had a chance to exist publicly. That eagerness can make the entire story feel artificial. So, the latest report have sparked more discussion about Pele's public relations than about Kate herself. Rather than focusing on her work or contribution, the conversation has shifted towards questions about image management, media manipulation, and apparent need to manufacture positive story. That outcome represents a significant public relation failure. If the goal was to make it appear relatable and well-connected, the results has been opposite. Many viewers see pattern of storytelling that feels increasingly forced. They see a palace establishment that appear determined to convince the public of something that should not require constant explanation. As the more media insisting on presenting Kate as surrounded by new friends and loyal supporters, the more critics question why such narrative keep appearing. The more aggressively the palace image is protected, the more fragile it can appear. And the more attention devoted to constructing an image of connection, the more attention is drawn to the possibility of isolation. For many observers, that is the real story. What began as another flattering royal headline has evolved into a revealing glimpse of palace public relation machine struggling to maintain a narrative that feels increasingly difficult to sell. Instead of strengthening Kate's image, the latest new best friend story has left critics arguing that it exposes a deeper reality, one that appears far lonelier and far less convincing than the image the palace want the public actually to see.